Today, I challenged myself to build a divided society in 10 hours in creative mode Minecraft. My name's Jem, and I'm always aspiring to be a better builder, so I love challenging myself to build under limitations. This challenge took a lot of time and effort, so I hope you enjoy it. Before starting any long build, I always like to make a plan. Usually that comes in the form of a mood board and a simple outline. So let's take a look at what I did to prepare for this build. Hello, good morning. Today I want to sit down and build for 10 straight hours, which is a major undertaking, which is why we're not going to jump straight into it. We're going to spend 30 minutes planning. First of all, I want to talk about what the concept I have is, and we're going to go over here and draw real quick with a mouse. It's going to be awful. We want a central castle or cathedral split on two sides, plazas on either side, I'm thinking. And there are buildings like this. The citizens of either side are never allowed to cross to the other side. I don't know, something like that. I think it's a cool little idea, but I want vastly different architectures on either side, and that's kind of the idea. I think it could be cool. Yeah, we want something like this. This actually works pretty well. Again, it's more for like the shapes of the buildings than for color themes, because the color themes, I think I want like one side to be like a bright society where like everything's white and like bright colors, and the other side is mostly black and grays. Our color palettes for either side, I think that's a good idea. This, oh yeah, this is it. I want like walls that separate a village, like this. Yeah. I actually don't mind this. Yeah, let's grab this as well. Look for like ruined arches. Yeah, I think at this point we're gonna move our mood board over to the second monitor and hop into Minecraft, shall we? Whoa. Hang on, what is this? Perfect circle. Once I got into the world, I started with wool outlines to indicate the broad strokes of what I needed, starting with a central circle and then quickly moving to the walls separating our two villages. With these foundations down, I laid out the path and the town square and built up some alleys and buildings. After 20 minutes of initial planning, I was finally ready to start building for real. And with that, I actually think that we've got a pretty good starting point, don't we? So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with this. I think that it's actually kind of time that we can start working on actual builds instead of laying things out. So let's start laying out a little bit. And I know I said we were done with walls, but we're not done with walls. Because if I'm looking over at my mood board, and I'll flash this on screen, the top left corner has a cathedral top thing that has like an archway underneath, and I think that actually looks really, really cool. That is going to be roughly what's in the middle. We're going to have spires on all diagonals. Perfect. There we go. Once I had the floor plan laid out, I started to use wool to shape the building in the third dimension, moving things up and down as necessary. After roughly 10 minutes of this, I was finally ready to start actually detailing the build. Okay, we've got our basic shapes in, and honestly this might be a little more than basic shapes. So let's start with some actual building blocks, shall we? I mean, that's exactly what we're looking for, right? Like this texture, but it's just kind of annoying to do manually. Dead set on using a chaotic stone pattern for the body of the build, I moved on to figuring out the roof. I toyed with this gradient for a while because I really want to make use of like the copper stuff for like the top. That's kind of like my thought process. But I decided against it, deeming it too wide to make good use of it without ample dithering room. We could do a gradient like this. You know what? I think this will work. With my colors set, I let myself off the leash to shape the roofs into the smoothest incline I could muster while maintaining that signature Gothic detailing. But maybe I got a little too detailed. This is very minute detail, but what if each of these shelves... Hello? Can I not put things in shelves? Oh, I can't do it with symmetry. That's interesting. Yeah, that was a 3-minute detour that no one will ever notice. So, we're in a pretty good spot right now. We just need to start making this a little fuller. These need to be a little fuller. We just need to figure out like where boundaries are, I guess. And we're also going to want to make heavy use of cobblestone walls, andesite walls, and stone brick walls to add like just a tiny bit of extra depth. With just 15 minutes left in my first hour, I spent 10 minutes building something that could only possibly make sense with a blindfold on. How did I think regular glass and granite would work? Anyway, I did manage to recover and started working on the intricate windows of Gothic cathedrals, which brings us to the end of our first hour. Okay, it's been the first hour. We're actually 5 minutes over. I didn't actually notice, but it's been the first hour, and my game crashed. Luckily, I didn't lose any progress, but I did lose my ability to give a coherent check-in on the hour. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling very good. This is coming together, I think, really well, at the very least this part of it. And yeah, that was all I said. So yeah, moving on to the second hour, my primary goal was to finish the cathedral. I knew going in that was a pretty lofty goal, but the day was young and I felt good. Unfortunately, I was already off to an iffy start because I couldn't figure out how to get these cathedral windows to look right for the life of me. I don't know, there's something that just doesn't quite look right about this. Like, I like it a lot, it just doesn't quite look right. It's just, I can't figure out how to justify the fact that there's pink there. I did eventually figure out how to make it work in gray. This is insane. This is super cool. Which both simplified the overall build and solved all of my problems with it. So I guess it's time to move on to the actual central building. I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of intimidated, but that's okay. I started with the connectors to the spires. These were by far my favorite parts of the cathedral build. I actually really like that. And I think that looks really cool. I actually really like that. I got to put together so much intricate detail in such a small amount of diagonal space. It was an incredibly satisfying little part of the build. After putting together these links, I moved on to the twin staircases on either side of the central chamber. Can you tell I'm procrastinating the center? Because I'm definitely procrastinating the center. I'm especially pleased with this lever technique for the railings. I've used this a lot before, but I still love it just as much every time. I'm getting a little intimidated at this point because this is where we actually have to make some decisions about how we're connecting this and like what the main room is going to look like, and that's going to make like the biggest difference to what this build is going to look like. But after a couple minutes of panicking while visualizing, I finally got to work on the foundational arches holding up the main chamber, and honestly, they went really well. I really don't have all that much to say about them other than to point out the fancy pattern lining the top. This is going very well. Very well indeed. Unfortunately for me, at this point in the hour, I decided to just build in silence, so I guess you're just gonna have to enjoy this time-lapse for a bit. So yeah, that brings us to the end of our second hour, and I'm feeling kind of incredible, actually. I think that we're gonna get this cathedral done by the end of the third hour, even though our goal was the second hour. Third hour, that seems okay. But I think we're also gonna have enough time to get the walls in, I hope. Yeah, I mean, probably. We're gonna make them a little shorter than what I had laid out here, I think. But yeah, I'm feeling super good, and I think that we're gonna be doing pretty well. So yeah, that's my check-in. See you in the next hour. Yeah, I think I'm gonna pause here, and go grab breakfast. So that's the first 2 hours. Hey, if you're enjoying the build so far, maybe consider liking the video, subscribing. Helps out a lot. Anyway, back to the video. After a quick muffin and orange juice, I kept up the good work on the cathedral. What I didn't keep up, however, was the talking. It took me 27 minutes to say a single word. That, of course, being... Oh, I didn't unpause the timer. Shoot. It's fine. We'll just go from there. Shoot. I don't even know how long I've been. It's probably been like 20 minutes. That's fine. But luckily for me, I did end up getting a little more talkative as the cathedral section came to a close, which I don't really have all that much to say about, except for, of course, our little diagonal connectors. I can't get over how cool these are. I love them so much. Woo! That's a cathedral thing, I guess. Exciting. And we're through that. Okay, I guess it's onto the walls, and I get to finally turn off symmetry for the first time in forever. At this point in the build, I was moving on to the walls separating our two towns. If we pull up our mood board again and take a look in the bottom left corner, this was my main inspiration, although it was admittedly very loose. Pretty much all I took from it was the idea of stone walls with periodic detailing. Like, my thought process is this should kind of feel like prison walls. They are trapped on their side. Something like that. That looks good. I really like that. Yeah, that's gonna look great. That's gonna look really good. Let's finish this up. With the main structure done, I turned over to the top of the walls. I spent a bit of time debating between a walkway or a roof, but I ultimately settled on a roof for one simple reason. Spikes. Having hostile looking spikes coming up and preventing trespassers from climbing over felt like such a perfect detail, and candles work wonders to simulate that look. There we go. That looks like you're not supposed to go over there, which is perfect. So now we can stack that way a whole bunch. Beautiful, beautiful. This looks really cool. So now what I want to do is I want to copy this pattern down. Just like that. Yeah, I really like that. That's gonna look really cool. With the wall design done, I spent the next 20 minutes or so finalizing them on either side, extending them downward, and cleaning up the ends. This took way longer than I would have liked, which brings us to the end of the hour. It's been an hour since the last check-in, and what have we done? Actually a ton. First of all, we finished the cathedral. The top spires are done. The inner area is done. The only thing that's not done is interiors. But I think I want to keep interiors as a separate thing. Once we've built all of the buildings, I want to do all the interiors in one giant swoop. Yeah, that didn't happen. But other than that, we also added these walls, which I'm sure I talked about extensively. But currently the challenge that we're facing is connecting the cathedral to the ground, because right now it's very floaty all over the place. And connecting these walls so that if you're a member of this society, you can't just go this way. We're pretty close to starting work on each of these villages, which I'm super excited for. So, yeah. Honestly, I have no idea why I made this sound like such a big issue in the check-in. Connecting the cathedral to the ground was kind of completely trivial, to be honest. And again, we're back to square one with the issue of how do we actually... Well, first of all, I do think that it would be cool. Okay, so here's the idea. I'm having a little idea, right? I want like a little garden in here, but it's going to be cut off in the middle, and then I want like a yin and yang shape in the wall. Yeah, and then there's like a tiny little garden with like a bench or something. This little garden is one of my favorite bits of the build. We'll have to put a pin in it though, because all I really did was set up the walls. I'm super excited to show you what I did with it towards the end though. This land is not very even, which is kind of annoying, but town square, that's what we're starting with. All right, here we are, the first village. I started with the town square. I found this really cool gradient for the paths and floor that I'm really pleased with. I figured out that this type of coral actually has a slight brownish tint to it that makes it kind of perfect for this. Also, if you're wondering what that wool was for, I was just inverting the colors. It looked cool in the time-lapse though. Okay, we have our town square. Now we need to build the town itself. Let's start with the courthouse or the town hall or whatever you want to call it. The town hall was probably the hardest part of the whole build. I was kind of directionless for the majority of it. I initially tried to stick with the color scheme I found for my mood board, but I quickly realized that it wasn't going to fit the town square. I considered redoing the plaza, but I was such a big fan of how it came out that I opted to just shift the concept as a whole to a palette more suitable for like a southern European town. You can see just how many palettes and attempts it took to get to something I like. The white and pink aesthetic is definitely not something I'm writing off. I'm going to use it for a town or a castle or something someday, but today is clearly not that day. For now, just enjoy the end of this time lapse. Also, I forgot to mention, but we breezed past an hour marker, so let's go back in time a little bit and hear what Past Gem had to say. Okay, so we got an update. They were at the 4-hour mark. This, phenomenal. I'm super happy with this. This, less so. I'm feeling very iffy about this. This I just like don't think has fit my vision like at all. And I'm kind of debating just tearing it down, if I'm being honest. I kind of don't like it. Yeah, I think things could be going a lot better, frankly, because I do not like this build one bit right now, and that's kind of a problem. Luckily, like we saw, I did pull through and made something that actually did end up looking quite nice. I like it. Okay, I think I've recovered it. The only thing that's left over is like, I don't know about this blue at the front. I feel like we've recovered from a real disaster initially. This is looking great. I really like this. Okay, this roof. This is the only thing that's left that's looking a little odd. Now, let me let you in on something. This town hall took a whole hour and a half. Yeah, my pace was really off. Other than finishing it, all I did in this hour was put together a few market stalls and a single tree, which leads us neatly into our next check-in. Okay, I think it's probably about time to check in. Okay, well, not quite true. It's been 55 minutes since the last check-in, but I salvaged the courthouse. I really didn't like it before, but now I think it is something that is actually kind of cool as the central building of this town. And speaking of this town, yeah, there's nothing else in this town. The next hour, however, was really productive. I started off by building this diagonal brick and aged copper building, which I was picturing as a town pizzeria of sorts. I wanted to make the build look aged but not dirty, and I think I managed that well, assuming you can look past the mud being, well, mud. The roof was also highly experimental. I never tried a roof of this sort at this angle, but I think it ended up pretty well. So well, in fact, that I reused it for the second building of the hour, which, let's move on to. It was basically a recolored version of the first. I was picturing this one to be a town saloon or a pub, some sort of third place, really. I wanted this one to be a little darker and more rundown than the pizzeria next door. I do think that the coloring communicates that pretty well. The third building of the hour was definitely the most fleshed out, although it's the hardest to see from the front. It's meant to be a second layer building hidden in the alley between the two public places. My idea for it was some sort of lab investigating some sort of mysterious fluid with magical properties. I chose honey for the fluid and put all of these copper pipes flowing throughout the build to transport it around. The world building I'm imagining is that this is the residence of a mad scientist who wants to dissolve the walls separating the societies, both figuratively and literally. With the lab done, so was our 5th hour, and time was definitely starting to feel tight. Okay, 6 hours in, which means that we are approaching the end of being able to work on this village, and honestly, we're making pretty good progress in that time. We just need to make these buildings here. I mean, we're getting pretty tight on time, to be honest, but I'm super happy with what I've built. So we have these 2 storefronts. I'm imagining this being a pizza place of some sort. Obviously, the interior is completely untouched. And then over here, this, I don't even know what it is, but it's a similar place, maybe like a pub or something of that sort. But then in between, we have this very narrow alleyway that leads over to this science-y area, which is experimenting with honey. I don't know what they're experimenting for. I don't know what their plan is. There's something sinister going on here for sure, though, considering we have this darker aesthetic in the lighter town. Which we're going to mirror over here with this building over here. It's also going to be a lighter aesthetic, but in the darker town. That's the plan right now, and I think that we're putting together something really cool so far. So yeah, I'll see you in the next hour. Hour 6 was a bizarre one. I finally decided to tackle the issue of the villages not really being walled in. I decided to build based on the geometric patterns of Icelandic basalt columns. The biggest issue is that this actually ended up taking the whole hour. I got really into the weeds with the detailing and shading of these rocks, which admittedly I am very proud of. I do definitely regret it though. This 10 hours is clearly not going to be enough. And in addition to using a full hour on rocks, I was also in a call. So I completely forgot to record a check-in. Say hi to the video. Wow, say hi to the video.
Hi, video.
Hi, Shaw. Hegale.
Hegale. Ah, finestra.
Okay, great. It can't be used.
Afanada. Can't be used. Garbage.
You know, maybe in hindsight it makes sense why I got so little done this hour. I started hour 8 with this weirdly heroic stance above the first village. This wasn't intentional, this is just kind of where my flashback started. Anyway, the actual progress of the hour started with moving things around to make room for the main builds of the hour. The townhouses. These were pretty fun to build, but honestly I don't have all that much to say about them. They were modeled after the townhouses you'd see in cities in Northern Europe like Amsterdam and Copenhagen. The windows were quite the challenge though. I came across something that looked really cool, but I decided to scrap them because of the angle that they needed to be viewed at, which was an impossible angle with the design of the town. I finished off the hour by decorating the town plaza and then running around for 15 minutes. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so it's been 8 hours since we started now, and I think this side of the town has really come together. In theory, I would love to do something with this zone. There needs to be farms for this place to really work as a standalone area, But yeah, as much as it pains me to leave this and these blank, we've only got 2 hours left and we have a lot of work to do. As hour 7 came to a close, I finally moved on to the other side and began work on the second village. I started with making the basalt formations, but this time I decided to use darker colors and opted for a different grass as well. At some point I decided that I was shying away from the two-sided architecture idea and instead that this side would be more alien. These rocks took significantly less time than the first set. I made them probably more detailed in half the time, but I did use Axiom's auto shade function. Okay, wow, I really speedrun that. That was like 20 minutes of just vibe placing blocks, and it looks okay. It doesn't look great. I mean, it definitely does not have the same care that was put into this, but I still think it looks good. Immediately after finishing up the rocks, I started on the town square. I followed the same basic blueprint as I used for the other village, just darker. As I started to move on to the buildings though, you could definitely tell my confidence was waning. Okay, we've got an hour and 20 to build a bunch of buildings. I don't know if we have time. I frankly don't think we have time. The first building I tackled was this town hall. Honestly, it's not my finest work, but it'll do. It was very, very loosely inspired by the Clash of Clans town halls, although I haven't seen those in probably 8 years. So finally, the remaining bits of the hour were spent copy and pasting the townhouses and recoloring them to make them a little darker. Yeah, I know it's lazy, but listen, look at the time. And listen, we do not have time for a check-in. We're just going straight on into hour 10, which you've been watching. We started with this tavern-type building. Frankly, I don't know what I was doing with this one. It's about as boring as a build can get, other than the diagonal, which I don't think helped this one. You can definitely tell I was running out of steam at this point. Afterwards, I wanted a clock tower, and I was still kind of directionless. I do think I pulled this one together though. As the hour began to wane, my building started to come back together with this mini church. I made sure to make it ornate, but not too ornate. I wouldn't want to take away from our centerpiece now, would I? Anyway, that was the last hour. But look at the runtime. Alright, so ordinarily this would be where I'd end the video. I challenged myself to 10 hours of building and I got through 10 hours of building. I ended up with a pretty solid build and a completely fried brain, but I just couldn't let myself be done with this. It felt far too distant from my vision to leave it at just that. And so, I didn't. I started hour 11 with a clear plan. Make this place feel full. I stopped trying to pretend like I could come back to things. I had 2 hours left and I was going to finish in 2 hours. First of all, I started back with the brighter village. These two sides had a clear sense of emptiness, so I started with a new rock formation. I put together 2 pentagon towers and decorated them as I did with the outside. As soon as I was done, I realized it was a little plain, so I added this blue crystal structure. This did wonders to cover up the gap in the terrain. The second half of the hour was spent building a barn. This was to cover up the other gap in the terrain and to explain why these people can survive in here. And with those 2 things, I dare say that this side is complete. The other side is where I had much bigger plans, so I finished off the hour by converting all the grass into this bluey, different type of grass. Okay, hello, welcome to the last hour of the build. We have a lot of progress that we need to make. Big picture update, I want at least this lab building in, I want at least these 2 buildings in. I would like to get this one at the end here. This one's kind of more optional, but the biggest, most important thing is we need some sort of barrier here. We just need to figure out what we're doing here because this needs to be a barrier, otherwise the whole concept doesn't work. So I've done a bunch of preliminary drawings. Please don't judge my art too badly. I'm not a very good artist. So I started off by trying to mirror the lab on the other side with this lab here. The idea here was it's kind of a greenhouse where they're studying the plants from the other side to see if they could maybe figure out what's so different about the other society. But yeah, it's just this rustic lab, and I think it looks really cool, although I don't really think I had enough blocks to make it fully work. For the sake of brevity, we're gonna skip over this building because there's honestly not that much interesting about it. And frankly, I'm far too excited for the final thing that we're gonna build, which is this simple little garden in the middle. This little part of the build is easily my favorite, despite being so simple. I love these little naturey bits so much, and I think this one really exemplifies less is more. And I may have lied a little bit because I did one last final thing, and that's scattering these crystal structures all over the side to fill in any gaps. And with that, we're finally done. Thanks so much for watching to this point. This has been one of the biggest videos I've ever made, and I really hope you enjoyed. This was supposed to be just a quick 3 or 4 day project, and it turned out to take about a month to put together, so I really hope it was worth it. If it was, like, subscribe, you know, all the YouTube things. But yeah, with that, I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!